Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. I've given you a teaspoon, okay? Now, that teaspoon, I want somebody at the table to find a teacup and practice hitting that teaspoon against the teacup. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, there needs to be someone else at the table who has a phone or a clock because I am going to create a challenge for myself. And the challenge is I may not take longer than 20 seconds per slide. Okay? And your job is to, when 20 seconds are up, ting, 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 and then I have to move onwards. Okay? So you are in control of this presentation, okay? But I've got to trust you that you're not going to do ting, 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 ting before those 20 seconds are up. Okay, so I've got a total of 15 minutes. I've got the slides. I've got 40 slides, and that makes it makes about 12 minutes, maybe 13 minutes, 20 seconds for my presentation. So in 13 minutes, 20 seconds, hopefully I'm going to say all that I need to say, and you can control the thing. So shall we make a start? Okay, have you got your stopwatches ready? Okay, one, two. Okay, and sorry, let me just, this is a Pecha Kucha format. This idea is Pecha Kucha, and Pecha Kucha is you communicate your ideas quickly and concisely. Okay, one, two, three, go. Okay, let me start. Right, I'm going to tell you the story of MJ Naidu. Okay, now MJ Naidu was an amazing political leader who I had never heard about. Okay, and I'm going to divide my presentation into three sections. I'm going to be telling the story about MJ Naidu's life. I'm going to be talking about how we can use Wikimedia for heritage. And then I'm going to help you think about how we can help others to represent and organize information around a specific domain. Okay, now that sounds very wordy, but it's going to make sense soon. Now, if you go to Wikimedia now, and you look for, how am I doing on time? Am I fine? Am I keeping to? Okay, good. Okay. If you go to Wikipedia now, and if you look up MJ Naidu, you'll find a page that looks like that, and you'll see there are different parts to it. You'll see there's a picture, you'll see there's text, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's a map, and you'll see there's a whole lot of references, and it looks like an encyclopedia entry. I think it is an encyclopedia entry. I created it, but it has the appearance of kind of form. Now, if you go back to the 28th of May and look for MJ Naidu, you will have found just a single sentence, actually two sentences about him. And that's maybe a brief summary, but he was an amazing man because his grandfather was a Satyagara peaceful protest. His father, his grandfather came from India. His father was a Satyagara protester, and then his brother was a very big activist. And he looked up to his brother, but he saw the mistakes his brother made, and then he changed things. And for his troubles, he got put in detention without trial and had Peter Maritzburg treason trial, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that is MJ Naidu. Now, this over here is a man called Padraig O'Malley. Now, Padraig O'Malley is an Irish peace activist who came to South Africa, and he wrote a book for Mac Maharaj. Now, I don't know if any of you remember Mac Maharaj. We all loved Mac Maharaj. And Mac Maharaj was the spokesman for President Zuma. Now, Mac Maharaj in this book tells the story of the struggle for South Africa. What I find quite interesting about Padraig O'Malley's notes, and you can find this on the Nelson Mandela website, is in those notes, he says the MJ, MD, MP Naidu and O Naidu family, and he says he doesn't know much about them. This Padraig O'Malley had written this book for Maharaj, okay, he'd written the book, and Maharaj was married to one of the families over there. So this is a very weird situation where we have Maharaj, who was married into the family, that didn't really release this information to his biographer. And if we go further and if we look at the book, we can see the timeline is very odd, because those things that are without black seconds, those things that are without black seconds, those were the dates that were mentioned in the biography. Those things that have black were left out. Okay, so 1894 is a crucial date in Indian history. That's when the Natal Indian Congress was formed. 1946, there was a massive passive resistance campaign. 1949, there was a big, the Indian population got taken out and beaten up by a whole lot of different people. All those dates in black were left out of the biography. And I started to think, what's going on there? This is an Indian politician. He comes from the NIC, but he has left out some key dates. And then I decided, okay, well, let's start looking at family trees. And what I did was I then, in the family tree, isolated who was who. I went all the way back to the grandfather who came from India. His son, R.M. Naidu, worked his way up to being a market gardener. His son, M.J. Naidu, then married Sana Perumal, and they had these 4 children. And this family tree was nice because it gave me a picture of how everything fitted together. But I couldn't fit in where... do you see Oma Gashin Naidu? I couldn't fit in. She was married to Mac Maharaj. I couldn't fit it in. So I tried another family tree. And this family tree allowed me to create all the relationships. And I started to see some kind of picture emerge. I then went to the Google Street View, and in the narrative that I got from them, they told me a whole lot of different places. They told me about Sastry College. Now, Sastry College I'd never heard of, but I Googled it and I found it. And this was a college that many of our luminaries went to, luminaries like Pravin Gordhan. A number of very high-up members of the ANC were schooled there. I discovered Lakhani Chambers. That was the chambers where Jacob Zuma used to be trained in his trade union days. That's where the NIC had their headquarters. That's where the ANC had their headquarters in Durban. None of these things are marked. There's no blue plaque on any of them. But they are places of, in my mind, quite significant historical significance. Okay, so then what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to write a story then based upon what I think MJ Naidu's life was like. But you'll see I've got numbers there instead of words, and those numbers are concepts, okay? Now, if I say dog to you, or if I say inja to you, or if I say hond to you, you have the same concept in your head. Something that might bite you, something that irritates and barks. There's a concept over there. These numbers also represent concepts, and I'll show you a bit more about them as we carry on. So this is what we mapped. And I think for the guys in Middelburg and the guys who are going to be hosting it soon, they might be quite interested in this. Is what I went to do on Google, on Wikipedia, is I taught myself how to create a map, and then I made each of those locations clickable. And so if you click on Sastry College, then you go to the Sastry College Wikipedia page. If you click on Red Square, you'll find the history of Red Square. I mean, it's all very communist and Marxist, but it's fascinating. It's another rabbit hole that is an interesting thing. And if you now then Google for MJ Naidu, you will find he appears right up at the top of the Google results. And if you speak to him, if you speak to ChatGPT in Afrikaans, can't remember, Kemang MJ Naidu, and Onwag MJ Naidu. I can't remember what languages I'm using. I only speak English and Afrikaans, but it also gave answers as to, yeah, thanks. Excuse my ignorance. But it also gave answers to these questions. And this is a result then of the encyclopedia article that we kind of put together. Okay, so that's the story of MJ Naidu. What I'm asking now is, how are we going to tell the story of your town, of your heritage, of your environment? Okay, and I think there are a few ways to do it, but I think one of the ways is we need to be thinking about how we want to use Wikimedia for heritage. And you'll see there are three parts over there. There's Wikipedia in the middle. On the left-hand side, there's something called Wikicommons, where all media files are stored. And on the right, there's Wikidata. And Wikidata is the most tricky part, but you'll get it. So who's going to tell the story of Middelburg Railway Station? I started a couple of days ago, and I found a nice Afrikaans article, and I thought, okay, well, let me start researching it. And you'll see at the moment it's sitting in drafts. That's user Derek Jagmoor, and that's the draft version. But when I went to the railway station, I took a couple of photographs. I put those photographs on Commons, and then I started looking at the line history. You'll see it's not very well referenced as we go on further, because I've still got to find more references for the whole thing. Or else, another one is the Simon van Stel Foundation. Who is going to be telling the story about that organization that was found? And some of the books, the places they restored. Who's going to be telling the story about Zonderwater prisoner of war camp? There's nothing on Wikipedia about that. There are lots of gaps in the narrative. Now, Deborah, I see you looking a bit concerned because I'm trying to take your book business away, but I'm not. I'm doing the opposite. I'm hopefully giving a whole lot of opportunities for people to buy books and then actually use them as reference sources. So the idea is not to replace any of our books that we are working out over there, but we're actually emphasizing the importance of books and resources. And if you're not worried, then I'm pleased. Good. Okay, so how do we come to know? I mean, I'm standing in front of you, I'm showing a presentation, but there are ways that we've come to know. We've had hierarchies in our lives. We've had the boss who tells the boss when we follow orders. We have bookshelves that help us to know. If you look carefully, that book is actually chained to the bookshelf. And it was in a church. And books were very precious and expensive. So if you wanted to access information, you had to go to church first, and then you could only read it while you were standing there. Family trees are another way that we come to know. And we know who our mother and our father and our grandfather, and we can trace our lineage back down. And maps then are ways of knowing. But if you look carefully at that map in the background, you'll see it's very old and only covers a very small part of Africa. And the map maker didn't know the rest of the picture. So he wasn't able to draw the thing. So I'm asking the question, who was MJ Naidu? Google has become a way of knowing. And many of us, when we are uncertain about some kind of fact, our first response is to take out our phone and to search for an answer. Wikipedia, as I said, has also become a way of knowing. But every now and then on Wikipedia, you get that little blue man, and the blue man says there isn't really an answer to this. And if you do your search in vernacular languages, you're far more likely to find that little blue man appears, because all the knowledge resources available are in English and quite a lot in Afrikaans. But if you look for them in vernacular languages, there's nothing there. How else do we come to know? Well, we look at maps. And this is a project called OpenStreetMap. It's different from Google Maps because you can actually be involved in the mapping. And each of those items there, you can be annotating and you can add further information to. And then other ways of knowing is GitHub. Now, GitHub is a bit complicated to explain, but essentially it's a place where coders put their code up. I don't know if any of you have consulted South African History Online. It's a reasonably good resource. I've used it. But essentially, South Africa History Online, they have put all their knowledge base in code on GitHub. And then that is a very good question. And that is where I don't have an answer, but I do want to just make a proposal as to how we think of this differently, okay? And then QR codes then are another way of knowing. And you guys are doing it here in Middelburg. You scan your phone and you get to an authoritative answer. So let's say we want to tell the story of the Boer War, okay? What do you use to systematically represent and organize the information and ideas about a specific domain? Well, you can use a timeline, okay? And if I had my screen over here, you'd be able to push that button forward and it would take you along the timeline and you would see all the events that happened in the Boer War, and the map below would correspond with those events, and you would have a sense of the narrative of the Boer War. But MJ Naidu over here, sorry, I'm just going back once. I ran forward far. Oh, bugger. How do I go backwards? Oh, there we are. Okay, there we are. Sorry. So that's the Boer War. That's the narrative of the Boer War, and we really have quite a bit of consensus of it. And that is how we used to write history. We used to write it yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and we had a linear line in history. But I suspect what's happening in history is we are now starting to see history no longer in a linear chronology, but it depends on who has the loudest voice that gets to tell the history. And I'm representing that in terms of circles. And this is a map then of information availability. Can you see where the information availability is most dense? And can you see where it is the most lacking? The fancy words we use for that is the global north and the global south. And in the global north, information density is there and you're able to find the information that you want. Whereas in South Africa or rest of Africa and South America, and you can see quite parts of Asia, that information density is very sparse. And I'll show you another picture over here. This is live stat of Wikipedia and the amount of information articles that are available in different languages. I have deliberately left out English because English is lingua franca, but these are the minority languages. So Afrikaans has 126,000 articles. The rest of our official languages don't even make up a quarter of that. So anyone who is looking for historical information in their vernacular language on a reference piece that we all assume everyone can consult will find very little information there. And so MJ Naidu is available in English. There isn't an Afrikaans version that I've written. There isn't a Zulu version that I've written. There isn't a different language that I've versioned. And so English people will read it and say, okay, cool, but what about the rest? Okay, getting near to the end. We're on slide 32 and I've got 8 more to go. How am I doing according to time? Are we still fine? Okay. If you click on MJ Naidu's profile, and if you have logged in, you will see that you can actually use a whole lot of tools to modify and change that profile. And I want to introduce you to just a tool right down to the bottom called a Wikidata item. And every Wikipedia page has a corresponding Wikidata item. Okay? And that Wikidata item is a number. But you remember that concept I gave to you of an inja, a haunt, or a dog? There is a Wikidata number for that. So there's this abstract concept that can be translated because we all understand what inja, haunt, or dog is. It doesn't matter what language we use. And Wikidata then allows us to do that. So I'm going to do this again. MJ Naidu was a younger child whose parents had passed away when he was young. He had an older activist brother, MD Naidu. Now, if we were doing this on a computer and you clicked on that, you would get to MD Naidu's Wikidata number. And if you got to his Wikidata number, you could actually see if anyone had written an English, Afrikaans, isiZulu Wikipedia page about him. He was a politician who led from the front at the Natal Indian Congress. Okay, and if you click on that, again, you'll find the Natal Indian Congress explained. He was a good student at Sastry College. Do you get the idea? These numbers are a representation of information. And essentially what's happening is these concepts are being caught together, okay? And the dots are being connected using something called the semantic web. And so MJ Naidu, yes, he was the president of the NIC. MJ Naidu also was involved, their family was involved with Gandhi's Satyagara campaign. And the Naidu family then challenged apartheid. But I made a really interesting discovery as I did this. The eldest brother of the Naidu family is J. Naidu. But he's not the J. Naidu you know. He's another J. Naidu. And if you look carefully, you'll find there's a company called J and J Naidu. And they are very successful as a company. But these are interesting things that we start to find when we dig around kind of semantic data. And you see pictures that you never expected. So semantic data, and you'll see that little number, 13156,181. That is MJ Naidu's Wikidata number. And that then represents all the details about him. This is a bit out of date. I've added the other two children to it. But the picture is there. Okay, so I'm nearly finished. And this is the hard part to explain. But what we've got over here is we've got, has anyone played with SQL? Is anyone familiar with server query language here? I'm not sure if anyone is. Anyway, if you are familiar with SQL, SQL is a way of querying a database. And this is similar to a database query. But instead of querying one database, it queries multiple databases. So it's a meta query language. And what it's asking over here is it's saying, please look for MJ numbers, find his mom and his dad. And then when you press play, do you mind pressing play for me? Actually, let's move to the next one. Yeah, well, let's go back. You mind just hitting that? Okay, and if you press play over there, and then scroll up, we start to see the relationships between people. But if you click on, let's say, MJ Naidu, just click, that's right. Do you see what's happening? The relationships between MJ Naidu and the rest are suddenly revealed. Click another one, let's see. Okay, so what's happening is the relationships between different concepts, those different Wikidata numbers, are being revealed because of this semantic web. And it's a fascinating way. So if, for example, I went to, let's say, Donald Trump's Wikidata number, and I used that same technique, I would see all of Donald Trump's family members, and I could click on each of them, and I could see their relationships. And if I did the same thing for Nelson Mandela, I could see the relationships and his family. If I did the same for Thabo Mbeki, I could see the relationships and his family. But I'm not going to go any further than that, because then I'll get into trouble. Next one, please. So if you are interested in seeing relationships, you can copy that address down, and on your computer, you could just experiment with it and see the relationships that exist. But again, I want to ask the question, who gets to make the history? Is it only us in this room, or is it the people who live in South Africa who have their own stories and their own communities? Final story. Michael is a Malawian man who works for me. Michael comes to my house at 8 o'clock every Thursday, every second Thursday, and we begin the day on Wikipedia. and we spend an hour just exploring how we could use Wikipedia. He is sending money back home. His family are dependent on that money. He spends his weekends selling remittance products, but he can see how Wikipedia is a way to tell his story to his friends back in Malawi. And that hour that I invest in Michael pays incredible dividends, because the rest of the day I don't have to supervise Michael at all. He can see the value in what I've spent in time with him, and Michael then can use what he's learned in his own context. And the challenge, I think, for us in this room is, how are we helping those people around us to tell their stories? And particularly people who haven't had the advantages that we have had. Sorry. Thank you.